Better Preach, episode 99, how to make much better slides for your next talk. Welcome to Better Preach, a podcast for Catholic leaders on developing and delivering great Catholic talks. I'm your host, Ryan O'Hara, a Catholic speaker who specializes in parish missions and parish retreats. And I'm so excited to join you on your journey of communicating the true, the good, and the beautiful. Are you like me? I always watch TV shows and movies at home with captions on. It's one of the reasons I don't want to go to the movie theater, because I can't do the captions. I don't know if I'm getting old or what it is, but it's just so much better with the captions. I can follow every little thing that's said, and I feel like I'm understanding what's going on much better because I can hear it and I can read it. And that's kind of the idea that I'm tapping into today. There's this psychological theory called the dual coding theory, is that we store information in two ways, words and images. And if you put them together, there's a much better likelihood that you'll remember the idea, words connected to images. Most people are running away from slides. I think you have an opportunity to make incredible slides that can really reinforce the big ideas from your talk. It's really helped me to communicate ideas better, using slides sparingly, but strategically. So I want to share 3 principles that really help guide me in that. All right. As you know, I'd love to hear any feedback on the show at ryanohara.org/betterpreach. There's a contact form there on iTunes or Spotify. Leave a rating and a written review. And as always, I would love to connect on Instagram at Better Preach. Let's get into it.
You ready?
Dog.
Better Preach. First Better Preach episode in my new studio.
In the stew.
Thanks for having me as your co-host.
Trusty occasional co-host, yeah.
Trusty occasional co-host. I think my nickname, how do you feel about me having a nickname?
I love it.
Yeah?
I love nicknames.
Co-host, co-hosty, in honor of Posty. I know your audience is huge Post Malone fans. Rumor has it. The Better Preach audience.
There's a total overlap between
fans
Ryan
of
the show,
yeah,
fans of Posty.
Yeah, like how to give good Catholic talks and Post Malone.
So he made an appearance because he lives in Salt Lake City. Post Malone lives in Salt Lake City.
That's right.
And word on the street was that he was at this bar right across the street from the conference, Seek 2025. And sure enough, he was there.
No, he wasn't.
He was.
He was at a bar across the street from Seek.
Yeah, and word got out, and people saw him and talked to him.
Why didn't anybody invite him?
Well, maybe they did.
All right, we got to get Post Malone at Seek.
Yeah, it was sweet. I saw him, and
you saw him?
I did.
How have we not talked about this?
I don't know. Because I don't know why we didn't talk about it.
You saw Post Malone in Salt Lake City.
Yes, just hanging out. And I took a picture of somebody taking a picture with him. And I didn't know him well enough to be like, to shout him out like Posty.
Like he was across the street? Or?
No, he was from me to you.
No, he wasn't.
Of course he was.
You're killing me right now.
I can show you the picture.
Yeah, after this pod.
Okay.
This is how have we not talked about this? Anyways, so this is even more of an appropriate reference.
Totally
I thought I was
appropriate.
just going to be left field Connor over here, but no.
No, you're always on point.
So I'm the co-hosty.
With the most E.
In honor of Posty.
Yeah, there we go.
Come on. We'll get him to be Catholic. Don't you worry.
No biggie.
Yeah, he's close. He's just across the street. Post Malone is across the street from converting to Catholicism.
True.
Let's go. Welcome to Better Preach, the only podcast I currently co-host.
And you do an amazing job.
And the title of this episode was going to be, Is PowerPoint Dead? To which I said to Ryan, yes.
And to which I responded, no.
Which I don't believe him. Who has PowerPoint? Who uses PowerPoint still?
I do.
What do you mean you do?
I have it on my Mac.
No, you don't.
Of course I do.
No, only PCs. If you're using PowerPoint, you're a PC user, which is something we have to talk about in another episode.
I haven't been a PC user since my Dell laptop from 2004. So I am fully in the Apple ecosystem, but I use Microsoft for Mac.
You have PowerPoint on that MacBook.
100%.
No.
Now, I don't use use PowerPoint to make the slide.
Oh, see, he's backing up everybody.
He's
PowerPoint. Putting it in reverse. He's embarrassed now.
I use PowerPoint to display the slides.
Okay.
Big difference.
But then so if you're using your computer to display a talk.
I'm not using my computer to display a talk.
Then why do you have PowerPoint?
Because other people have PowerPoint, and I send them a PowerPoint slide deck.
Suspect. Sus, as the kids say.
For sure.
Ryan's relationship with PowerPoint is sus.
It's totally sus, for sure.
Anyways, all right. As much as I'd love to go down that rabbit hole.
PowerPoint might be dead, but using slides in Catholic talk, I don't think is dead.
Definitely not.
In fact, I think it's making a comeback.
Yeah, is it on the rise?
It is on the rise.
Let's go.
I think so. In fact, it was about 15 years ago. I was at a conference in Atlanta called Catalyst, and one of the breakouts was this great topic of like, what do all the greatest presentations in history have in common? Something like that. I'm like, I got to go check that out.
Slides.
Great slides.
They're all using slides. PowerPoint.
Abraham Lincoln. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep.
Well, so this woman, Nancy Duarte, she was, I think, like the former VP of marketing for Pepsi.
Okay.
So she understands how to tell a story, how to sell something, how to communicate really well. And she wasn't talking at all about slides.
Okay.
But she was talking about what, the greatest speeches in history have in common, from the Gettysburg Address to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream to the iPhone launch 2007 with Steve Jobs.
Nice.
And so she had this great idea of how the best talks in history go back and forth between the way things were and the way things could be.
Yeah.
The way things were and the way things could be. The way things were and the way things could be. And you end up with that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how she mapped what was in common between, these three. And it became kind of this really fascinating way to think about a talk. But what actually stuck with me wasn't even so much that template for a great talk, which it is. It was the fact that she used slides so effectively.
Even all these years later, you're remembering, like, could you remember even the content of the talk? You probably could, because you've got a vault as a brain when it comes to this stuff. But
yeah, so she mapped out that image of the way things were, the way things could be, the way things, and it was basically this graph of going up and down, and up and down, and up, and so that image was that's the reason I can remember it.
Right. Yeah.
Because I saw her basically illustrate her big idea.
Yeah.
But that was one effective slide. But she basically used many bold, striking images, one after the other. And again, not every image is created equal.
Yeah.
You can have a cheesy image to demonstrate a point or a beautiful one.
Yeah.
And because we know the internet is just full of terrible, word art, or what's that called?
Clip art.
Or, I mean, there's just
memes,
just tacky, terrible things out there. But she used bold, beautiful, striking images and minimal text, if any, on each of these slides. And I was just drawn in
That's awesome.
to her presentation.
Yeah.
So that shifted, because I think at that point, 2010, 2011, like a lot of people, I had seen so many bad uses of PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And
it's all we had, though, right?
It's all we had, and people were making slides in PowerPoint.
Bad news.
If you're not a designer, it's not going to turn out well. Snooze, man.
Yeah.
And we're talking tons of text, small font,
ugly
art, just bad images.
Everything misaligned.
Yeah, and then, or the other thing, animations.
Oh,
dude, slides.
That was cool when that was cool
for a minute, man. But really, so there was just so many things to hate about how slides had been used, and they kind of have this kind of corporate feel to it. And just does this fit in church world? Well, in Catholic world, it had never really made a leap beyond that.
Yeah.
And so people were like, no, I think it's not helpful. In fact, the reason it wasn't helpful is they're ugly and it's distracting.
Yeah.
And it's actually detracting from your presentation.
Yeah.
It's like a train wreck. You can't take your eyes off this thing. And you don't want to be looking at the slides. You want to be listening to the content and getting the big ideas.
Yeah. And it just shoots yourself in the foot as a presenter. if you've created something that's distracting people from what you're actually trying to communicate.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are you're the king of this. You're doing it all the time.
I don't know if I'm the king of it, but I definitely have gone all in on trying to make slides that help to tell the story well.
Well, and don't take this the wrong way, but you're not a designer.
I'm not.
So I think this is even better coming from you because you're like, okay, I'm not a designer. One of the things I love about you is you know how you want things to look though, and you appreciate great design and know kind of elements of great design, but you've had to find a way to go make this stuff on your own.
That's right. And so there's a couple of principles that really help me when I'm putting a slide deck together. And in many ways, I go back to that presentation in Atlanta, Nancy Duarte, and kind of use a lot of what I saw her do.
Yeah.
It became kind of the way, it really formed me to think about slides differently. And the first thing I would say is think images, not text. So the primary thing that you're putting on any slide is a picture, a photograph, an image, something bold, striking, beautiful.
Yeah.
And starting there, because again, what is the saying? A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. Oh man.
So I'm trying to communicate an idea. And if I can give a beautiful image that expresses that idea, that's like pouring gasoline on the idea. And it just blows up.
Yeah.
And that's what you want, for people to be able to see an image and it reinforce times 1,000 what you're trying to get across. A good example I had recently was trying to put the idea across of knowing your audience, customizing talks to the people in front of you. And so I'd actually used ChatGPT to help me brainstorm. I was trying to think what's a good image for knowing your audience, and ChatGPT sort of gave me a number of ideas. But the idea that it gave me was the work of a tailor, sort of measuring someone for a tailored suit.
Cool. Yeah.
It was a great image, and a tailor obviously is learning and knowing his audience.
Yeah.
It looked great, and it communicated the idea perfectly.
Huh.
And so having a great image really helped to sort of get the big idea across.
Yeah, and you only need one.
That's right.
Like one good image per big idea. I mean, I could even say you could, depending on the talk, only need one or two images per talk. I mean, I've given talks where it's like, I'm just going to find an image that is the like worst case scenario, right? If you're in a rush or you don't feel equipped to do whatever, finding something that, like you said, I love that word, reinforces what you're trying to say, almost like subliminal, subtle, like you're surrounding them almost with the content.
I think in general, when it comes to slides, only use as many as you need and no more.
Yeah.
Again, the point
less is more even?
Less is more, especially if they're great images connected to big ideas.
Yeah.
And so if the images are the first way that I think about slides developing, and if I use text over an image, because sometimes you need to, even if you just want to kind of help reinforce the point, I use 1 to 3 words at most over an image.
Yeah.
And I always try to make sure, again, as a non-designer, I want to make sure that the contrast works.
Yeah.
White text over a dark background or vice versa.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to actually move the image around or zoom out or zoom in to make sure you get a good because that contrast with text also is really important.
If you're going to use text at all over an image. Got it.
The next principle is just that. I would say think phrases, not paragraphs.
Okay.
If you're going to use text and only text on a slide, think phrases, not paragraphs.
Yeah.
Most of us use PowerPoint in like bullet format. I never use bullets in a PowerPoint slide deck. If I'm going to have 3 ideas that might otherwise have been bullets, I make hopefully three separate beautiful slides to communicate those 3 ideas.
Yeah.
So that might be actually a helpful way to think about it. Let's say you're wanting to make 3 points and your tendency is to think like bullet points on one slide. Blow that idea up.
Yeah.
And again, 1 image per idea. But if if you do use text, let's say you're going to quote scripture, or you're going to quote a saint, or your main points that you're making, think phrases, not paragraphs.
Yeah.
So when a scripture comes, grab the 5 to 6 to 8 words that are the most important parts of that scripture that you want to reinforce.
Yeah.
You can read the whole scripture. You
Yeah,
should
yeah.
read the whole thing in context, but have the big idea of any one of those scriptures as the text that you display.
Yeah, I just did that actually in a talk. My favorite scripture is Acts 4:13, and it's short, so I feel like I could justify putting the whole thing, Acts 4:13. So, for they saw the boldness of Peter and John and could tell that they were common and uneducated men, but had seen that they had been with Jesus, something to that effect. What I love about that scripture is the common and uneducated. Like, it's such an interesting, specific 2 words. Like, they were common and uneducated, but they could tell that they had been with Jesus. And so I would put just common and uneducated on a slide.
Beautiful.
And again, it just supported the scripture, didn't take away from it. People didn't look at it more than they would have listened to what I was saying. But even that is a good example of, like, preface that by saying, well, that's a short scripture, but 30 words?
Yeah, 30 words. That's probably too many.
That's probably too many.
Because again, the more words you have on any one slide, the smaller font that you have
Yeah.
to use, the harder it is for people to see. And again, we don't want people reading.
Right.
You want people experiencing something.
Yeah.
Just shines a light on the big ideas that you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, so think phrases, not paragraphs, if you're going to use text at all.
Yeah.
And then the last principle for me is to build it last, to build the PowerPoint or the slide deck last. You need a full talk that's ready to go.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I go back over it and find where can I best highlight, how can I best highlight through images or short phrases the most important ideas of the talk.
Yeah.
And so it may end up being, on average, between 6 and 10 slides
Yep.
for anyone, say 30 to 35 minute talk. I give a lot of kind of keynote talks like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. And a rule of thumb that I often use, if I have, multiple main ideas, I don't want to use a slide just to show one idea. I want to try to use them for all of the main ideas or none of the main ideas.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because to me, if you have a great image for one big idea and you don't have anything that's associated with the other ideas,
Then it separates that idea.
it tells you that
Yeah.
that's different. That's
Yeah.
maybe more important. And so I want to be careful because whatever you put up on the screen communicates something. So for me, if I have, and oftentimes I talk there's short lists, or it's just a way of teaching that I think can be helpful. If I can't get a great image for each one, I may pull back and not use images for any of them.
Yeah.
And I might use then just text, because I
Yeah.
think a great phrase can be helpful with a consistent kind of look
Yeah.
to the slides. So that's just a small rule of thumb. I want the ideas to be the most important thing. And by building it last, it sort of puts the slides in their place.
Mm-hmm.
They don't drive the presentation,
Yeah.
but they're there to augment, to help amplify, the ideas that you're trying to get across.
I love that.
So that would be like the 3 big ideas. Think images, not text. Think phrases, not paragraphs, and build it last.
And then some practical questions.
Yep.
Do you click through your own slides?
No.
Never.
Well,
You try not to.
I try not to because, as we've talked about, I forget.
Yeah.
I'm trying to connect with the audience. I'm trying to give a talk, and if I inevitably will forget, and
Yeah.
I'll be 2 or 3 slides behind, and that's terrible.
Yep.
And also, if I have the clicker in my hand, I find myself wanting to make sure that the slides
you're
advance.
looking back.
And I'm
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
back, and now my attention is off of the audience and off of where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
So what I do is I print 2 copies of my speaker notes.
Okay, this is my question. How do you prep the person running your slides?
Right. So I've got 2 copies of my speaker notes, one for me that I'll write on day of. That's my final step. I'll hand the 2 or 3 pages of notes, and in there I have all of the slide transitions clearly marked. It's in bold, yellow, highlight, the word slide.
Yeah.
So you can't miss it. And I hand it to them. I number the pages so they know how the talk flows in case they get the papers mixed up.
Yeah.
and I give them the slide deck, and 98 times out of 100, it works without a hitch.
Yeah.
And so part of that has to do with how I prep my talks. I do tend to write out most of what my talk will be,
I've always admired that.
even though I don't think it'll hopefully come off that way.
Yeah.
I want to have a good sense of what it is I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so that style, that habit really does work well for someone else to run the slides.
Yeah.
I think whatever you need to do to have someone else run the slides, to give them as much information about those slide transitions as possible, so that you're not worrying about the slides.
Right.
I want to basically give them the slide deck,
Yeah.
give them when the transitions are, and then trust them.
Right.
And I tell them that I'm not going to worry about where the slides are at. I'm just going to give the talk. Do your best to kind of follow along. Occasionally, 5% of the time, there will be something that I'm saying that is slide dependent. Sometimes it's a particular. I have a story about my dad. Crazy story. A newspaper clipping of my dad being hit by a train in 1963.
Yeah.
And it really matters that you have that image up on the screen. And so if it's not up there, I usually ask them to advance a slide.
Yeah.
But that happened. I want that to be as rare as possible.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not about the slides.
Right.
The talk has to be able to stand. This is the other principle. Your talk has to be strong enough. And if the PowerPoint goes down, your talk does not derail.
Mm.
And I think that's a good test. If you're too reliant on the slides, you haven't thought about how to communicate the ideas in case the slide isn't there.
Yep.
So that's another good rule of thumb. Again, if you have a graph, let's say, you need to be able to communicate what's on the graph, even if it never shows up.
Yep.
I love that. You don't talk about the graph.
Yeah.
You know? So I never want my talk to be dependent on the slides. I just want them to augment and help the ideas.
Man, that could be a whole nother episode of like how to roll with the punches on stage.
True.
Actually though, audio mishaps, slides, wrong slides, new slides, people, I don't know, anything can happen. And it is like, how do you protect the talk?
You know this, and I've learned this from you. Number one rule of thumb, keep going.
Keep going.
Ignore the problems.
Yeah.
Talk loudly. If the mic goes out, wait for the audio person to bring you a new
like
mic.
Everything happened on purpose. Yeah. Even if the slides are messed up, that you have to make them think that it's part of the talk. Like, it's only awkward if you make it awkward.
It's so true.
Anyways, that's a whole nother episode. But let's close by, what are some practical tools that you use to make slides, to help, anything you're using to prep for these talks?
Canva is the game changer.
Dude.
I know professional designers, poo-poo Canva, whatever.
Oh, it's the best.
But for amateurs like me, and I pay for the pro version, having all the kind of bells and whistles that Canva provides, Canva is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I don't build things in
it's like $120 a year.
$120 a year. And to have, basically you've got a designer on hand there to make things look beautiful because of their templates and
it's crazy.
And just the way that the thing works so intuitively. I love it. So I make all of my slides in Canva, and then I export them as JPEGs, as images.
Yeah.
And I just put images onto a PowerPoint slide. Why do I use PowerPoint? It's because, again, most of the people who run the slide decks on their computers, that's what they have.
Now we're getting into it.
That's why.
This is why you have PowerPoint.
That's the only reason.
All right.
I haven't made a slide in PowerPoint in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I will not.
Well, and we've talked about this before, but that also helps foolproof for like secure your slides from being changed. Because when you load slides into someone else's computer,
they're looking for fonts that match what your fonts are. Everything, and I've had that happen and learned the hard way.
Yeah,
and it looks bad.
Terrible.
Like you make all of these very particular design, settings in mind based on your font and the size of the font and whatever, and then you get it into something else, and it throws the whole thing off.
Yeah.
So it sort of future proofs your slide deck.
Yeah.
So Canva is the number one thing I use. The other thing I use is, again, I'm really dependent on great images.
Yeah.
And you could pay a bunch of money to have access to a lot of images that cost, and they would be great images, you know. But I use Unsplash, or Pexels is another one where you can get a lot of great free images. You just search it up, and you'll be surprised at what's funny is you do start to see there's only so many images in there.
Yep.
So we all know there's a few images that have been used by many different people in a lot of different Catholic settings. There's like the bros together. There's the girls together overlooking this sort of, sunset or sunrise or something. We've all seen these images that we've seen in Unsplash. Between Unsplash and Canva has been excellent. But the other one is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Is I use it as a partner to brainstorm, because so often it's like, I want to communicate a big idea. That's how that Taylor image make a talk applicable for an audience. I was just stumped. I'm like, what image could I use to help amplify that point, to know your audience?
Yeah.
And ChatGPT suggested a tailor, an image of a tailor measuring someone for a suit.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's sweet.
Well, and I have such mixed feelings about AI tools, but I'm starting to become more of a fan, because it would be the same as if I hired a creative team, right? If I outsourced and said, hey, I want to pay you guys a retainer a month to brainstorm ideas for me to send you talks, for you to summarize them for blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, that's what it's doing,
Exactly.
So I'm a huge fan of it now. The other thing, going back to Canva, is Canva comes with a massive library of images as well. So you can just search in Canva.
You've got all of that. The other thing that I do, I worked hard initially on trying to come up with kind of a color palette and some fonts that I liked. You helped me kind of decide on some colors and some fonts and what I would call like templates for the different kinds of slides that I'll use. And so I have kind of a master slide deck that I use for every new slide deck that I use. So it has all the same colors, all the same fonts, all the same kind of, if I'm going to quote a scripture, the slide's going to look like this. If I'm going to quote a saint, the slide's going to look like this. And a lot of times I'll try to have an image or a painting of the saint on the same place in the slide consistently.
Yep.
So I don't have to think about any of those things. That really helps. And then I can just copy it for my next presentation. Awesome. That gets me 90% down the road.
Yeah.
And the other thing I try to think about is, how will a slideshow look at a venue? General rule of thumb, if the projector and screen are built in to the room, or there's like a big TV that's a part of the space,
use it.
Then I'd be open to using it.
Yeah.
But if you have to put up a projector and a screen, especially in a church, like in the sanctuary, man. I don't want to distract from their beautiful sanctuary space, the crucifix and other sacred art there.
Yeah.
And it just looks bad.
Well, and then there's just so many causes for error. Cables, people tripping. You just never it looking right in that space. There's all those things. So that tends to be kind of a rule of thumb. If you have something built in, then we could flex to it. If you don't, I would always think twice. Yeah. I love it, man. Slides are on the rise.
Slides are on the rise. And I think the reason is one, in part because these tools, getting great images is so much easier now.
Yeah, it's right there.
Making great designs is so much easier.
Yeah.
And PowerPoint itself stinks, in terms of creating great slides.
Yeah, but it's a tool. It's another tool.
Exactly. And I think we are a visual culture,
100%.
And I think if you leverage primarily your slides using the power of great images, especially sacred art. I know for me, just did a talk recently on the decision to follow Jesus, and there's this great image, Caravaggio, of the call of Matthew. I don't know if you've seen it. Folks could look this up. I should link to it. It's the story that painting tells about that moment of decision when Jesus breaks into Matthew's life. In this image is a talk itself.
That's crazy.
So sacred art is an incredible, thing to leverage as well.
That's awesome. Well, check Ryan's show notes for links to all these tools. And
awesome, dude.
Thanks for joining us from the co-hosty.
From the co-hosty in the stew.
Let's
it, man.
Go.
Thanks, dude.
Better preach. Out.
Please reach out with thoughts about the show at ryanohara.org/betterpreach. There's a little contact form there. You can reach out on iTunes or Spotify and leave a rating and written review. Otherwise, come say hi on Instagram at betterpreach. You have millions of choices when you listen to podcasts. Thanks for pressing play today. See you next time for episode 100. It's going to be awesome.